Hello everyone, my name is Hristo Bonev and today I will be presenting the visitor design pattern. The visitor design pattern is a behavioral design pattern. In other words, it increases the flexibility when carrying out communication between different entities. The visitor design pattern enables you to define a new operation without changing the classes or elements on which it operates. So what is the motivation behind the visitor design pattern? Well, imagine that we have a collection of classes. Each one of these classes or elements has a structure that is fixed, meaning we cannot change the structure of these classes. But what if we wanted to add additional functionality? Well, since they're fixed, we cannot simply implement that additional functionality within these classes. This is where the visitor design pattern comes in. It enables us to visit each one of these elements by using a function called accept, thus enabling us to add additional functionality to all of them. Let's take a closer look at the sequence diagram. First, the client creates the structure, also known as an element, and an instance of a visitor. Next, the client executes the accept method of the structure and sends the corresponding visitor. The element tells the visitor which method must be used in order for that element to be processed. Therefore, the visitor must have a method for each class type included in its definition. The visitor uses the accept method to start the execution process over the element's children, in this case concrete element A and concrete element B. Then, concrete element A tells the visitor which method must be used for processing it. The visitor proceeds with the rest of the children of the element and executes the accept method on concrete elements B, C, D, and so on. After having traversed through all elements, the visitor provides the necessary results to the client. This is not necessarily executed through a getResults method. Let's take a closer look at the generic class diagram. We have the client class that instantiates an element and a visitor. The visitor interface is implemented by two or more concrete visitors, each of which will add additional features to all of the concrete elements below. Element is also an interface that is being implemented by concrete element A and concrete element B. These concrete elements are accepting a visitor to visit them by implementing the accept method defined in the element interface. For my demo, I decided to implement a program that will calculate the state sales tax on different sales items. To do that, I created a visitor interface that is implemented by three concrete visitors: Michigan concrete visitor, California visitor, and Montana visitor. Each of these states have different sales tax rates, so they would calculate the price of each item in a slightly different way. For example, Michigan is going to calculate the price of an item at a 6% tax rate, while California would calculate that same price at a 7.25%. Montana, on the other hand, will execute the calculation at a 0%. Next, we have all of the elements or sales items that implement the item element interface. Each one of them implements the accept method to enable the concrete visitors to visit them and perform a calculation. To make this project more interesting, three of the items are implementing a variation of the singleton design pattern. The client will be able to buy only one iPad and one Apple TV products. He would, however, be capable of buying two Apple Watches. If he wanted to buy a third one, the system will deny the purchase. I made a list of some of the items sold at Costco to be able to implement my application. I listed the item names, whether they were exempt from sales taxes, indicated by an E, or whether sales taxes applied to them, indicated by an A. Mountain Dew is exempt from taxes in Michigan, but not in California. I also listed the prices of each item for each state. To obtain all of this information, I spent some time talking to a customer service representative and going over all the receipts. Let's take a look at the source code. We have the visitor class that is capable of visiting each one of the sales items. And then we have one of the concrete visitors, Michigan concrete visitor, implementing the visitor class and all of the methods in it. So if a Michigan visitor was to visit an almonds object, it will print out the tax exempt code, item name, and item price, which includes taxes as well. The implementation of the other concrete visitors is similar to this one. Next, we have the item element interface, which defines the accept method. The accept method will accept a visitor, so either a Michigan, California, or Montana visitor. On the right hand side, we can see the implementation of an almonds item. It checks what state was passed to it in the constructor and sets the tax code and prices of that item accordingly. We have three accessor methods, and of course, the accept method, which will enable a visitor to visit this object. The rest of the concrete elements have a similar implementation to that of almonds, except for the iPad and Apple Watch items, which implement singleton. An iPad object will enable the client to use a single instance, while the Apple Watch will enable the client to use up to 2 instances. The implementation of Apple TV is similar to that of iPad. And finally, we have the client. It will ask the user in which state he or she will execute his shopping. Then it will read in an input file that contains a shopping list and populates a global array list variable. So for example, if the input file holds almonds, chicken Alfredo, and Ziplocs, it will add the corresponding object to the items array list. Next, the program will return the correct type of visitor based on the user's input. Finally, the print receipt body method will enable the correct concrete visitor to visit each one of the elements and print out its tax code, item name, and price. And now it's time to run the program. So this is my program. We will try to open up this shopping list 2 text file, which contains all of the items that we want to buy. For example, we would buy chicken Alfredo, baby wipes, an iPad, and then we would try to purchase a second iPad. At this point, the program should print out an error and prevent us from purchasing that item. Same goes for Apple Watch. It will enable us to buy 2 of them, but when it gets to the third Apple Watch, it should print out an error. So then the program is going to print out all of these items, the tax exemption code, and the prices associated with them, just like you would see if you were to go shopping at Costco's. This is the client, so if I was to run the program wants me to enter Michigan, California, or Montana. I will enter California, and it prints out the header of the receipt. We're shopping in California. It says, let's open up the input file. So it bought a chicken Alfredo, baby wipes, an iPad, and then for the second iPad, it printed out an error. It enabled us to buy an Apple Watch, a second one, and then for the third one, it printed out an error. It enabled us to buy socks, Mountain Dew, and then a Kit Kat. And since we are shopping in California, Mountain Dew has taxes on it, as indicated by the A over here. Then the program gives us the total price and the total number of items bought. So it's not going to count all the second iPad that we wanted to buy or the third Apple Watch that we wanted to buy. And then it prints out the date and the time. To do all of this, the program uses about 6 methods. First, it prompts the user to enter the state code. Then it prints out the receipt header, so Costco, wholesale, and then the state at which you're shopping. It populates the array list by reading through this input file, and depending on what it reads at each line, it's gonna populate the array list with the corresponding object. So if I was to go to populate array list, it reads the input file, and then if it says almonds, it's gonna create a new almonds item and add it to the items list. And we can also see that iPad uses get instance instead of the new operator because we have implemented singleton. Finally, by using the initialize corresponding visitor method, it would return the correct visitor based on the user's input. So if we go to that method, so if the state entered by the user was equal to Michigan, it's going to return a Michigan visitor. If it's equal to California, it's going to return a California visitor, and so on. And then we're using this visitor to paste it into the print receipt body function. So if we were to open up that function, it will go through the array list, visit each one of the items. If the item is not equal to no, meaning we were able to successfully grab it and singleton did not prevent us from grabbing an instance, it's gonna print out the exemption code, the item name, and the prices of it. And it's also storing the total sum in a global variable. And if one of the objects is equal to no because of singleton, then it's gonna print out an error. Some of the benefits of the visitor design pattern are that it allows you to separate the algorithm from the classes on which it operates. You can also easily add a new operation to all elements by providing a new visitor implementation. For example, a New York visitor that implements a different tax rate. Some of the drawbacks of the visitor design pattern are that it makes it more difficult to maintain the code, especially if we wanted to add a new element, like eggs. Another problem with this design pattern is that if you had a lot of concrete visitors, say 50 of them instead of 3, you would have to update every single one of them if you wanted to add additional functionality to your elements. Thank you all for watching. If you'd like to learn more about the visitor design pattern, feel free to visit the links below.